Okay, so here's going to be a short lesson on polynomials. There are four types of names of polynomials that we're going to talk about. The first is a monomial. So you know from science class probably, or English, that mono means one. So monomial means it has one term. So examples of monomials would be 8x squared, or negative m cubed, or 4xy. A monomial becomes a binomial, bi we know means two, when two monomials are put together by a plus sign or a minus sign. So you can count the number of terms of a polynomial by the number of plus or minus signs there are. So this has a plus sign in there, so here's term number one, here's term number two. So 5y minus 7 would be another example of a binomial. 5y would be the first term, and negative 7 would be the second term. Same with this one, 6xy, so it doesn't matter how many variables are in a term as long as there's not a plus or a minus sign separating them. So 6xy is term number one, and negative 7y would be term number two. So tri means three, so a trinomial means we have three distinct terms. The reason why this last example is a trinomial is because 8z and minus 4z, or negative 4z, they are like terms. So we can combine them so that this would say z squared plus 4z plus 1. So this would be another example of a trinomial, even though originally it had four terms. We use the word polynomial for anything that has more than three terms. So 4 terms, 5 terms, 6 terms, you get the idea. Okay, with polynomials, we want our final answer to be written in standard form. What standard form means, basically, is we want the biggest exponent first and then down the line. So here is an example that's not written in standard form. The reason it's not written in standard form is because this middle term has an exponent of 3, but the first term just has that invisible exponent of 1. So if I were to rewrite this so that it was in standard form, I would have to write the negative x cubed first. We make it negative because the minus sign is in front of the x cubed. And then we would write the positive 15x. And then we would write the constant, which is plus 3. Here's the second example, negative 8 minus 2x plus 9x squared. So starting with our largest exponent, we would want to put the 9x squared first. Oops, positive 9x squared. And then the minus 2x would be next, so minus 2x, and then our negative 8 would be last. Why don't you go ahead and pause the video and try these two on your own. So what you should have gotten for this one right here is 2b to the fourth. So exponent of 4 is our biggest one. Then we have the negative b squared, and then finally the plus 6b. And over here, our biggest exponent is the 3. This is a cubic trinomial is what it's called. So you would write the negative m cubed first. Then we have a positive m squared. And then lastly, the minus 10m, or negative 10m. Okay, 2 more things we're going to cover today. The next is adding polynomials. When you're adding polynomials, we're basically just going to be combining like terms. So when we multiplied terms that have exponents in our last unit, we added the exponents, but when you're adding 2 terms that have exponents on them, you're just going to be combining like terms. You don't add the exponents as well. So in this first example, we've got a plus sign. So really, we can just drop the parentheses. We don't have to do anything with the parentheses at all. And then we're going to combine like terms between the 2 trinomials that we're adding together. So first, we start with our biggest exponent, and in this case, our biggest exponent is 2. We've got 2 of them. So we're going to combine 3x squared plus x squared, and that's going to give us 4x squared. If there is no coefficient on our term, we know that the invisible coefficient is 1. If it was 0, then that x squared wouldn't exist at all. Then we're going to combine our x's together, so we have a plus x, or plus 1x right there, and a plus 4x here, so plus 5x. And finally, we have this plus 6 and plus 10, so our constant is going to be a plus 16. All right, in our second example, again, we have two trinomials, but this time we do not have them both in standard form. So it just takes a little bit of extra work, but it's no biggie. So again, you can just kind of drop the parentheses. The parentheses don't matter at all when we're adding polynomials because we're just going to be combining like terms. So I'm just rewriting it to start. And then now I'm going to combine my like terms. So we start with the biggest exponent. In this case, we have two x's that are cubed. So we have an plus x cubed here. So that's a 1x cubed. And 2x cubed over here. So together that makes 3x cubed. Next, we're going to look for an exponent of 2. And we have two of them. We have a negative 5x squared right there, and a positive 2x squared right here. So that's going to give us a minus 3x squared, or a negative 3x squared. We only have one term that just is an x. Our other term is a constant. So these, we're adding two trinomials, and we're actually ending up with a polynomial that has 4 terms. So our next one we're going to have is the plus x. It did not have a like term to combine with it. And finally, our minus 1. So our two trinomials, when we combined our like terms, ended up giving us a 4-term polynomial. All right, here are two more examples of adding polynomials. Why don't you take a minute and write them down, and go ahead and pause the video, write them down, solve them on your own, and then we'll see if you get the correct answers. All right, here are the answers. So on the first one, when you combined your negative 5a squared and your 2a squared, you should have gotten negative 3a squared. Then you have a plus a and a minus a. Those are going to cancel each other out, so you're not going to have any a's in your final answer. And then finally, we have our constants. A plus 2 and a minus 9 is going to give you a minus 7. So this time when we added two trinomials together, we ended up with a binomial because our middle terms canceled each other out. On the second example, your biggest term here are squareds, or I should say your biggest degree. We have got two squared terms. So if you combine 3x squared and 5x squared, you get 8x squared. 4x and 2x gives us 6x. And 3 and 1 gives us 4. All right, we're about ready for our last thing. All right, for our last thing, we're going to subtract polynomials. And really, this just gives us one extra step than we had when we added polynomials. And that extra step is because we have a minus sign in between our two polynomials, we need to distribute that negative sign to everything in the second set of parentheses. It's kind of like distributing a negative 1 everywhere there. So we'll rewrite this first. The first set will always stay the same. But then the second set, when we distribute this negative sign, we get negative 3x squared. This negative x becomes a positive x, and this negative 8 becomes a positive 8. We cannot forget to distribute that negative sign. But once you do, your steps are exactly the same as adding polynomials. So now we're just going to combine like terms. So 4x squared and negative 3x squared gives us 1x squared, or just x squared. Then we have negative 3x, positive 1x, negative 2x, and a positive 5 and a positive 8 gives us positive 13. All right, so in our second example, same thing. I'm going to rewrite it. The first set is always going to stay the same, but in our second step, we need to distribute that negative sign all 3 places. So this becomes a positive 2n squared, this becomes a negative 2n, and this becomes a positive 4. And then, like before, we're just going to combine like terms, so 4n squared and 2n squared gives us 6n squared. We don't have anything to combine with this n, this just plain n, so it's going to be a minus 2n or negative 2n. And then finally we have a positive 5 and a positive 4 to give us positive 9. All right, let me give you 2 problems to try on your own and we'll be done. All right, go ahead and pause the video, write these 2 problems down, and then I'll write down the answers in just a second. And here are the answers. If you have questions about how I got those, just ask me in class.